Hello and welcome into the RotoWire Esports Show. I am Andrew Laird, joined as always by Ethan Sexton today to break down Wednesday's four-game LPL LCK slate. We finally have some bigger ones. Ethan, it's been, 4 days. We've seen pretty much everything that can happen in a two-game slate. We've seen one big favorite get upset. We've seen two big favorites win. We've seen this stupid game stack that happened today. But at least we can get back to normal, at least with these four gamers for the next few days, thankfully.
Yep, yeah, it'll definitely spread out lineups a bit more, which is a good thing, to have a lot more options on the slate. And, the LCK comes in starting tomorrow, and there's a couple good teams on the slate. So hopefully it'll spread things out for everybody, and we won't have to look at 50-way ties for first place or anything like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, one of my lineups today finished behind a 38 lineup chop, and the lineup that I had was shared like 17 times, I think. And it was just like, I think these two game slates are tough, man. And of course, none of them were the game stack anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating when that happens. I mean, it still happens on four-game slates too, but just not, as bad.
Right.
So you sometimes you just need a little luck. Definitely not to toot my own horn here, because this only happened one time last year, but I was lucky enough to win one GPP last year, and it was mainly just because I was the only person I had a unique lineup, and you just need a little bit of luck sometimes to be the only person that's playing one lineup in a big GPP and it actually hits. So, people, if people are trying this for the first time, try not to get too frustrated, because it's just something that happens. But these bigger slates, we'll get things spread out a bit, and that'll help a little bit at least.
Yeah, I think the positive, if you're somebody who plays a lot of big showdown slates, when it comes to the NFL, lineup uniqueness is more important than anything else. Right. And obviously the GPPs for League of Legends are significantly smaller, so you don't have to get quite as weird, but it requires you to get a little weird. And so if you're really playing these GPPs the right way, and with how top heavy they are, the goal is to finish first. If you're building lineups for min cash, you're just not going to make it. And so, you may min cash a few days in a row, and then you're just going to lose over time. It's just, it's not sustainable. So, yeah, so we got to get a little weird. Today was the little weird going with the game stack from Top Esports and Rogue Warriors. Before we jump in, TES, are they done? What's the deal here?
I wouldn't say they're done, but maybe we should adjust our expectations for them this year. I mean, it's only been two series, and they still have a roster full of really talented players. So I would expect them to turn it around and at least be, competing for a playoff spot by the time all is said and done, this split. But, man, maybe right now they don't look good, and they certainly don't look like a team that can win the league at the moment. But it's only been 4 days for them as well. They've played twice. Losing to Suning is one thing, but losing to Rogue Warriors is a pretty bad surprise for them. So I wouldn't say they're done, but maybe we need to just kind of downgrade them a little bit, especially for now, until they start to show some more signs of life.
Yeah, the nice thing at least today was they at least scored. It's not Suning just blasted them, but I guess that's probably maybe it's a little more about Rogue Warriors than it is about Top Esports. But anyway, that's
the scary thing for them is Knight has looked awful, and coming in when we talked about Saturday's slate last week, I think I said he's one of the best players in the league, and he should be, but he's really been a problem so far. But I would expect them to turn it around at least to some degree and still end up in a playoff spot by the end of the split. Right.
Yeah. All right. So Wednesday, there's a big GPP 80,000. For the main one. There have been some people in our Discord who were talking about how they have tickets for it, which is always nice because we're going to get some new people in. If you are a RotoWire subscriber, you can get access to our Discord pretty easily. Just go to rotowire.com/chat, CHAT, to get in there. I'll plug this too. If you're not a RotoWire subscriber and want to try us out for free for 10 days, just go to rotowire.com/pod. That's POD. It's 10 free days, no credit card required. You can jump into the Discord during that time, see everything we have. We also have a bunch of League of Legends stats on the site too. that you can comb through. There are plenty of places you can get, or there are a few places you can get League of Legends stats. We're also one of them. So
yeah. Ours are very easily navigatable, though, is the big plus for ours, I think. So
that's a lot of other sites are the basis of how we do things. Of just like, if this takes 17 clicks to do it, can we do it in 3? And so,
right.
And if you are a subscriber and have checked it out and have any suggestions, please feel free to send those along. So 2-game LPL, 2-game LCK. It seems like the slate is exactly how we would have expected one like this. We've got 2 decent LCK favorites. I was just looking at some props earlier. Like the kill props are obviously lower in that one than the 2 LPL ones. Although one of the LPL ones was falling a bit. But you had a nice call earlier. What was that? Saturday? Was that the first game with Invictus Gaming? Had a nice win over JDG. They're the biggest favorite, playing LNG. That one has the highest kills props. They're basically like minus 250 for a sweep. So do you think that's where everybody starts?
I think people will take a look there, but it's going to be really tough to pair them with something you like.
Anyone?
Even doing double jungle is pretty hard. If you're going with Invictus Gaming. So they definitely deserve to be that big of favorites. I think they looked really good in their first game on Saturday. They crushed JDG, and they looked like they were firing it on all cylinders. And LNG are a team that has 2 players I really like in Tarzan and Icon, but the rest of the team, looks a little weak, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to compete tomorrow. That'd be a pretty big upset if they took down IG. But the problem with IG is just they're priced up, deservedly so, and it's really hard to combine them with anything other than an underdog, pretty much.
It's funny
which makes it challenging.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because we've had, I think, almost every slate we've had, we can at least get a jungler captain for the 2 favorites. I say that, maybe it didn't happen today, but whatever it was.
Right.
We have Team WE is favored over V5. Genji's big favorite over KT, and then T1 over HLE. So I was like, all right, I'll start with Invictus Gaming and like see what happens, going through like my spreadsheet for my stacks and stuff. And it's like, all right, it doesn't work with Genji, doesn't work with T1, doesn't work with and I'm like, oh man, like, this might be a slate where you either have to get, I was going to say you can get weird. It might be a slate where you either have to get dumb in order to get the 2 favorites, or time to start liking some underdogs.
Yep. If you want to go IG, you're pretty much definitely going to have to pair them with an underdog and then kind of figure out which one you like the best. I actually kind of like the both LCK teams a lot tomorrow for a couple reasons. I think that people will veer towards the LPL teams because historically the LPL games are way bloodier than the LCK games, a lot higher kill totals, and like you mentioned with the kill props, the LPL games have higher kill props. I think maybe that brings down the LCK ownership a little bit as people look to jam in those Chinese league games. But the reason, I really like both Genji and especially T1 to win pretty handily tomorrow. I think both of those teams are really solid. Both of them are pretty much bringing back their exact same lineups. Genji's bringing back their exact starting roster from last year, so they've already got continuity. And they're a team that can compete for the title, but they usually end up falling just a bit short, finishing like 3rd in the league. They can't quite come up against the top 2 teams. Like last year it was T1 and Damwon for most of the year, and that looks like is how it's going to be again this year. But Genji are kind of like the 3rd best team normally in the league. They've already got synergy built in because they're bringing the same roster back, and they've got a great player in Ruler who is just a dominant carry, one of the best AD carries in Korea in the world. And he's a guy who can carry these games. And I like them against this KT team tomorrow. I think KT has a team that has some upside. They have their franchise player, if you will, in UCal in the mid lane that they're building around. And then they have a couple other guys that could end up being pretty solid players this year. The tricky thing with KT for tomorrow, if you're looking at them potentially to pick them as your underdog if you're going with IG, say, is it's going to be really hard to predict who they're going to play in the jungle tomorrow. They have 3 junglers, and the Kespa Cup lineup, they played Gideon, and Gideon isn't even on the DraftKings player pool. So if they have some sort of inside information, I'm not sure, but it doesn't look like he's going to play. My guess would be blank, but ultimately I'm not really looking at KT, and it's very risky to kind of go with one of their junglers anyway. And I guess this is a good time to mention that unlike the LPL, for those of you who are new, the LCK announces their starters, but they don't announce them until like right before the series starts. So the first series starts at 3 a.m. tomorrow, and I'm sorry guys, but I'm not going to be awake and confirming that lineup on RotoWire. So you can go on Twitter and look for them, and they'll be available. But it's only for that 3 o'clock game. So the T1 versus Hanwha Life series, those lineups might get announced before their series starts, but it won't be before lineup lock happens. So it makes it kind of tricky in that regard. If I can just hit on it, I think T1's lineup should be pretty straightforward. Their tricky spot is also the jungle between Cuz and Elim. I'm going to guess it's Elim, but I'm not 100% sure. Their other spot that they rotated a lot last year was between Faker and Closer in the mid lane, but I'm pretty confident that Faker will get the start on opening day in the LCK because he's the best player of all time. He's the GOAT, if you will. So I think they'll at least do him the honor of giving him the start in the first game. And it's not like he's washed. He just didn't look as good last year. But I'm pretty confident that he'll at least draw the start. And if they win that game 1, he should close out the series, I would think.
So speaking of that game, Hanwha Life obviously has 2 pretty big additions in those carry spots. Do they make you think maybe they have enough to get over T1?
I'm not expecting it, and I'm hoping that people kind of think that with you're referring to Chovy and Deft.
Chovy and Deft, yeah.
The mid laner and the AD carry. Those are 2 great players, don't get me wrong, but I think T1 just their synergy as a lineup, and I mean T1 has like 5 studs on this team. The only spot that they changed up was in the support role. They went from Effort and they brought in Carrier from DRX, and Carrier was arguably the best support in the league last year, so they upgraded their weakest position. And I just think they're going to be a really good, solid team all season long. Should be one of the 2 teams competing for the title with Damwon. I'd put those 2 as the favorites in the league going in. Hanwha is a team that should be like middle of the pack. They should be fighting for a playoff spot, I would think. But a lot of it's going to fall on Chovy's shoulders as one of the great players in the league. But we saw it with DRX last year. Him and Deft can help make a team pretty solid, but ultimately they're not going to be one of the better teams in the league, I don't think. And part of it, too, is, jungle's a weak spot for HLE. Top lane, they brought in Morgan from Team WE. He's a pretty solid player, but nothing special. I just don't see them beating T1 tomorrow. I really like T1 tomorrow. And they're priced down because they're not as big of favorites as the 2 LPL teams especially. And to me, it's just like salary saving. I'm happy to use them in my lineups with confidence.
Yeah, I was IG are so expensive that when I was going to try to combine them with either Genji or T1, I was just like, man, all of them are expensive, but they're actually not quite as bad. Like I think you can pretty much get away with Genji and T1 together if you are willing to take the 2 Korean sides, but.
You can do that, and you can also, I'm pretty sure you can use one of the LCK teams with WE as well. So the 3 other favorites aren't so extravagantly priced like IG are, and it's just like you said, it's just the odds being reflected in the salary, with IG being just the largest favorites on the slate by far.
Right, and coming off like a pretty big first game that helped.
It looked great.
Who do you see is the most likely upset?
Man, it's tough. I'm just looking at a couple of the things. Sorry, I'm not making eye contact to the thing, but I guess the underdog I would look at would probably be KT, but I'm not that confident. I mean, the Chinese league has had big upsets in pretty much every slate so far this year. So you could look at a V5 or you could look at an LNG. I mean, like I said, I really like LNG have Tarzan in the jungle, who was former Griffin jungler. In 2019, Tarzan was looked at as one of the best junglers in the world, and then Griffin had a lot of issues heading into 2020. They ended up getting relegated from the LCK, and then he sat out the summer split completely, didn't play on any team. So he comes into the LPL now, and he links up with Icon, who historically was a really good mid laner on OMG, a player I really liked a lot. But then last year he kind of took a step back and wasn't as good as he had been in the past. Those are two solid players to build around on that lineup, but like I think I said this earlier when we were talking about IG, like the rest of the team doesn't really look very good at all. And it could be proven wrong, of course, but if you want to sprinkle in some LNG, they're going to be the lowest owned team just by the fact that IG are the hugest favorites on the slate. So, crazier things have happened, and at least they have two really good players that should be pretty good, at least on that roster that they could potentially cause an upset with. But like V5, I don't see it against WE, who I'm pretty high on. V5 just their roster's like meh. Like PP God was really good last year for them in the support role, but like can a support 1v9 these games? I don't think so. Lang Ji is a solid top laner, but like their mid and 80 carry spots are just kind of like average players, and I just don't see it. I don't see them beating WE, and then like I said, I don't think Hanwha can beat T1, and KT I really don't think will beat Gen G, but KT, that to me would be the least surprising of the upsets, because I do think UCal is a good mid laner, Doran's a solid top laner, Hybrid was pretty good last year in the LCK, so maybe, but really I think, and I say this on every slate, maybe I'm just too conservative for the most part, but like I always kind of lean towards the favorites unless, like we had IG over JDG the other day, but that wasn't that big of an upset. The books are smart, and I just tend to lean that way. Maybe I'm too conservative, but
I mean, in fairness,
I like the favorites, and
they're favorites for a reason.
Exactly. I mean, I like the favorites, but especially in China so far, we've seen some pretty wild upsets. Not least of all today with the Rogue Warriors being top. So, I mean, I wouldn't fault anyone for taking a shot in GPPs on some of the lower owned teams for sure.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that, I mean, odds-wise, like LNG will probably be the least owned, but it's not necessarily because everybody is like going all after IG. Like, obviously, we would love to play them, but like if they're that expensive, there's only like so much you can do. So you're almost not getting as much leverage against IG if they're not that popular, because obviously you get the points that LNG will get against them, but usually you take the biggest underdog because everybody has the biggest favorite, and if they crash, then you get the double. But like if you get like an LNG win, but then like T1 Genji they win also, like it
still might not be enough. Exactly.
Yeah, it might not be enough.
Yeah, they're just definitely going to be the lowest owned team. So, but like you're saying, you're not getting the straight up leverage of going against the biggest favorite that everybody has, because it's going to be pretty tough to fit IG in any real combination that you're super confident in, I think.
Unless you play an underdog.
Yep.
Like, I guess the real leverage is IG KT or something like that. Any of the underdogs really works out with IG. Yep.
You might be able to do double support with IG. I haven't even tried it, to be honest, but it's just, I don't think IG will be. I think IG will be the lowest owned favorite, just because, like we're saying, they're going to be so expensive. So, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, trying to see here. IG Genji only works with support, with a support captain, and the same thing with T1. And with WE, I'm guessing is
probably the same
thing.
think.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you got to get comfortable with a support captain on a slate where you're going to have people playing 80 carries and mids from two teams that could smash.
Yep, possibly. For sure. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to bring up too before we go is I've noticed in these games so far, and it could just be a Chinese thing because that's all we've seen so far, but it seems like 80 carries are the main carry threats so far this season, and they're always kind of are anyway, obviously, but it seems so far that pretty much in all these games, the 80 carries have really been outpacing even the mid laners so far. So if you're looking one way or the other, I'm kind of leaning right now, trying to get in 280 carries if possible. I just kind of wanted to bring that up after watching 4 days of games, at least in the Chinese league. And even with these Korean teams coming in tomorrow, you've got two of the best 80 carries in the world playing T1 and Gen G, and even Hanwha Life, because Hanwha Life, because Deft is, historically one of the best AD carries in the world. He's kind of on the downswing of his career now, but that's just something I noticed. I wanted to bring that up too, just to mention.
Cool. Yeah. All right. If you guys have enjoyed this video, if you just hit the like button below, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell for the notifications for any new videos. As I said before, if you'd like to try out RotoWire for free for 10 days, just go to rotowire.com/pod. That's POD. Gets access to our subscriber Discord as well, where there have been some pretty good conversations so far about these slates. So, Ethan, thanks for that, and good luck on Wednesday.
All right, man. You too. Thank you.